Welcome to Ultimate Mario All-Stars, the series where I aim to complete every Mario game ever released. The next games are officially licensed bootlegs of Donkey Kong, Crazy Kong, and Crazy Kong Part 2. Maybe I should spice the commentary up a bit. Yeah, I can do better. Due to the high success of Donkey Kong, arcades around the world were clamoring to get their hands on a cabinet of the game, and Nintendo was struggling to meet the demand. This was especially true in America because of business growth issues, such as Nintendo of America relocating its headquarters. Nintendo has a history of making licensed clones of arcade games by companies like Sega Gremlin. With this in mind, Nintendo made the interesting decision to hire a company to make licensed bootleg cabinets of Donkey Kong to meet the demand while also making a profit. To start meeting the demand, Nintendo of Japan hired a relatively unknown company, Falcon Industries, to create these bootlegs. And by relatively unknown, I mean the only way to find any information on these guys is from interviews of the former staff and court case documents. Falcon itself has no information page due to its obscurity, which is crazy. The process of bootlegging is also strange. Originally, the game was based on a clone of the arcade game Crazy Climber that would run on Donkey Kong hardware. Falcon then took the modified code and then hired another company, UPL, an arcade publisher that was close to Falcon, to develop the game. Eventually, the game boards were ready to be distributed and installed into general arcade cabinets. However, Nintendo of Japan had a specific agreement that these game boards were to be exclusively sold in Japan only. To ensure that the legitimate boards were sold, Nintendo gave Falcon the Nintendo Seal of Quality stickers to place on each board. Falcon took interest that these stickers were in English, a nearly universal language, and they took advantage of this oversight by secretly exporting boards into other countries. These countries were France, Italy, the UK, and, more importantly, the United States of America. The game boards were also not copyright protected, so other bootlegging companies made their own modified versions of Crazy Kong to get their own profit from the Donkey Kong craze. This ultimately led to a loop of copies, all because Nintendo's first major hit in the arcade industry. Falcon was distributing these boards to multiple countries, which was a breach in Nintendo's contract, as well as producing more boards than Nintendo limited them to. When Nintendo of America soon noticed what Falcon was doing, Nintendo of Japan filed a lawsuit against Falcon concerning these breaches of the contract. On July 5th of 1982, Nintendo won the case, and this established the prevention of unfair competition by law. Eventually, Nintendo cracked down on multiple arcades worldwide to destroy any remaining bootlegs of Donkey Kong on the premises of piracy, which, as you can tell, mostly succeeded, and became a running trend for Nintendo to do. This won't be the last time we hear from Falcon, but it is still interesting to find that Nintendo licensed bootlegs to be sold, then immediately struck all of them down. Crazy Kong's makeup is as expected when it comes to bootlegs. It has its own logo and copyright information on the title screen, but the color palette and audio is absolutely terrible, to be frank. The physics and technical limitations, as well as coding inexperience, led to the game's current state. It was so bad, for instance, that the sprite capacity for Crazy Kong is half of Donkey Kong's, which is evident based on the gameplay shown. I propose that everything stated made the game easier than Donkey Kong gameplay-wise, but the presentation is horrendous enough to not recommend it. Interestingly, Falcon did realize that the bootleg could be better. Now that there is less of a time crunch to develop the game, even less than Donkey Kong's, the developers improved Crazy Kong by a tremendous amount. Within the same year Donkey Kong and Crazy Kong were published, they started selling Crazy Kong Part 2. There were so many improvements to this release that even Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Donkey Kong, was impressed by it. The first major change is the better color palette. It's mostly orange instead of green. It still doesn't look appealing either, but at least it's easier on the eyes. Unfortunately, the audio is unchanged, which is a shame. Another improvement was the structure of the stages. It followed the original Donkey Kong's layout more than Crazy Kong's, but when you get far enough into the game, parts of the girders will have gaps Mario has to jump over. Now here's the real kicker. Part 2 added a whole new cutscene in the demo screen, something that Nintendo ran out of time to implement. This cutscene added more clarity to the overall story of Donkey Kong, and this impressed Miyamoto the most. The games themselves followed the original Donkey Kong pretty closely, so the gameplay is unchanged for the most part. There is a version of Crazy Kong Part 2 that changes the stage's layouts even more, which offers more variety to the gameplay. This is unheard of for a bootleg if you ask me, because it somehow made improvements on the original game. My completion goals for these games came down to beating 2 loops of each game and its variants, which is actually a lot of Donkey Kong gameplay as I beat every individual board. Also, take my word for it, but if you think Crazy Kong's audio is terrible, the other boards sound much worse. Even still, they were all hugely easier to complete than my time playing the US Donkey Kong board. Ending off the video, I know I previously said I would review each game I played in the marathon with a rating, but I thought it would be more convenient to compile them all into short reviews on a single document, so you can stay up to date with my progress. You can access it through this video and the main spreadsheet. This will also allow me to make script writing flexible for future videos like this one. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the comments of future livestream, and don't forget, have a super day!